Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was very, very insightful. Anjula and Ifat, the session on education marketing on Quora was extremely helpful for us to understand how brands are leveraging. You have shared some great insights and context on brands engaging with their target audience. And I think there is a lot of food for thought for brands and agency representatives today on the call in terms of success stories and the approach that you have shared. Just to re-emphasize the importance of how education institutes can effectively engage with their target audience on Quora. So we have a very highly engaged nature of this knowledge community that's on Quora. And we've helped number of brands achieve success with Quora ads. And to share one such phenomenal success story, I would like you to welcome Marco for a fireside chat on leveraging the power of intent. Hi, Marco. Glad to have you. So, very quick introduction. Marco is the marketing director at the Global University Systems and is spearheading all their marketing efforts for one of his business schools, Berlin School of Business and Innovation. He began his marketing career in the United States, working for some of the biggest names in the hospitality industry, like the Ritz-Carlton and Fairmont Hotels. Following his move to the UK 4 years ago, he started working in the education sector. Together, we look forward to deep dive into the understanding of how education brands like BSBI have leveraged the high intent platforms to reach their marketing goals. And with that, let's dive right into it. So, Marco, just wanted to understand what are some of your observations on consumers in the post pandemic world, and how can brands leverage platforms like Quora to reach these consumers?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Great presentation so far. Really, really fun and informative. Of course, us at BSBI knew a lot of this already. Therefore, we started using it last year. But yeah, with the pandemic, obviously the two things that I notice in the consumer behavior, first of all being, and I think it was mentioned earlier, the flexibility. People want more flexibility when it comes to education. Of course, we talk about online or hybrid models, taking the classes around their schedules and other obligations. And I think in the pandemic and post-pandemic kind of markets, the brands that have been able to implement things that kind of respond to that new need of the customers have managed to kind of gain from otherwise very unfortunate and a bad situation. The other thing that came with kind of the pandemic, I think that people now need, well, pandemic and the high inflation rates that we're seeing now, people need more convincing. Obviously, the money is not as worth as much anymore. It doesn't go as far as maybe a couple of years ago. A lot of people were laid off or financial instability, things like that. So that extra kind of nudge is necessary. And kind of talking about Quora, this is, I think, where I personally see a lot of value with the platform, because it's very well trusted. Like you mentioned, it's different people from all walks of life coming to actually learn. The brand, the company itself really is adamant to preserve that trust and kind of clamp down on fake accounts and stuff like that. So the trust is the first kind of thing that comes to mind when we think about Quora, and that's where we kind of, I think, were successful during the last 2 years, and now in the post-pandemic world with Quora, that provided us that trust from its audience. And when we establish ourselves within the platform, it was just kind of going from strength to strength.
That's very, very interesting, Marco, because especially the fact that you've highlighted that brands learn to be flexible and, we're working towards building consideration and as well as trust for their, products and services. So taking that thought ahead, we'd love the audience to know what are some of the tips on how brands should be looking at exploring intent-based platforms? Is there something specific that they should be doing?
Right. Well, I think us as marketers, to get to that point where we understand, the first thing, obviously, understanding our audience, what that persona is. It all starts with that. But then all the work and the grunt work that goes into getting to the point where we can really kind of customize the message for a certain part of the audience to where it clicks and has that emotional response. I think that's the beauty that we've seen with Quora, where everything's topic, high topic and interest intent, and it's already kind of laid out for us to use to the best of our abilities. Like you said, there are different topics, almost all of the, any topic you can imagine, but then you can kind of delve deep into, if we're talking about education now. So, is it postgraduate? Is it what kind of programs? Is it finance? Is it business? Is it anything else in between? So I think, it's just a no-brainer, because knowing your persona and having the right message, platforms like Quora just help you already kind of, send that message to the right audience and really, really micro target, the ideal audience for certain programs.
That's actually a very, very interesting approach. And I'm glad you highlighted that, because a lot of marketers understand that, but they don't really go about really identifying and understanding their audience and then customizing that message, to drive those clicks. So just taking, just to understand this further, can you share how you leverage a platform like Quora to drive through the full funnel? Or through the entire customer funnel, the journey for your brand's objectives? So how you are planning to use it in the coming times? We'd love to know your perspective on that.
Yes, so a bit of kind of backstory. We started running paid campaigns on Quora in October 2021 for our IT programs and business management programs. Obviously started with the topic targeting to really kind of pinpoint that high intent audience. We then tested as well and worked with keyword and keyword history campaigns as well. And from the get-go, we really had an amazing kind of performance. You mentioned some numbers, I think, already in terms of the lead to app rates and lead to sale rate. Lead to sale, I think the highest, it went almost to 2%. Our lead to app rates are anywhere between 12 and 20%, which, I mean, right off the bat, it just tells you the quality of the and the relevancy of the leads that we were getting from this platform. But I think the real kind of game changer was when we started to post some organic content as well, that complemented the paid campaigns that we already had. So that started in February 2022. And there's two sides to it. Obviously, the first one is just posting on our profile. And for us, this was just, we were reusing content. We're producing a lot of content anyways. So we were just reusing some of it for this platform. And again, right from the get-go, it was an amazing response from the audience on Quora. You mentioned, I think, 5.7 million views. By now, that's almost 10 million views of all of our content on our profile. And then the second part of this organic approach was the promoted answers as well. This content was used for promoted answers, which kind of further just solidified our brand and our visibility within this high intent kind of audience. And this is something we've tested different regions. Obviously, there was a lot of testing in between all of this. The most of the success came from some African and Southeast Asian countries, which is not a surprise. That's usually where a core customer is. So I can only imagine for other brands that their core audience is in North America, for example, where Quora has the most of its users. I can't even imagine the success, the potential success. So for us, it's been really, really an amazing ride from the get-go, and we're just kind of at this point, it's just one of our tools in our arsenal. It's not even a question if we're using it or not using it. It's just how do we improve it even more.
Thank you so much. I think that was a great share, Marco, especially how you build on topic targeting to drive intent, and you tested keyword targeting. There are a lot of times we walk brands through leveraging it, and the way you have done it at BSBI is beautiful. So, now as we come towards the end of the session, we had one quintessential question for you. What are the three marketing trends you foresee shaping up in 2023? We are so close to the end of the year. I mean, who knew it would pass by so quickly? So how is it that you are gearing up, and what are the trends that you see?
Right. I think there are so many, which is kind of makes it kind of hectic, but also super exciting for everybody who's in marketing. I think first one I would kind of point out is probably, I think the boom in the influencer marketing will continue to grow. That coupled with streaming and video based content, I think is going to be a winning combination with millennials, but definitely with Gen Z, specifically talking about, for example, TikTok, small little bite-sized video clips that people just love. It's going to be a winning combination, and it's also something that since last year we've started kind of exploring for BSBI. Other than that, as we're trying to find new ways to kind of really understand our personas, our customers, our audience, big data will continue to drive that forward. Modeled conversion data as well, kind of really understanding how we got that converted lead. Usually we have that last touch point where we, it comes from a certain channel, but understanding fully the trajectory of that lead that led them to being converted into, a student is something that, at least us at BSBI, this is still something that we're developing and trying to understand, but there are some tools in the pipeline to help us with that. And for that, I'm really excited, because that's going to fill in certain gaps that help us understand, when it comes to holistic marketing approach, how every point of that holistic approach is contributing to creating those conversions. Yes, the really interesting thing for me is, we've all heard about in the last couple of years issues with, cookies and the privacy and the whole Apple thing, and us being unable to really track anybody who comes from like an Apple device. So as those are being kind of faded out, I'm really looking forward to see what kind of technical solutions all of these giants, Google, Amazon, all the others, will come up with, and how that's going to look, be used, and how precise it's going to be compared to the cookies that we had in the past. So I guess that's three. I mean, obviously there's
Yes,
a lot to talk
it is
about, and
right.
again, going back to the trust and kind of needing more kind of um, nurturing when it comes to audiences after post-pandemic. I think anything regarding branding and kind of image management is going to be huge as well.
Right. Thank you so much, Marco. I think it is so important to nurture your clients. Once you have that lead with you, how you keep, reaching out to them at the right moment to convert them. That whole customer journey is so important, whether it's via influencer marketing, whether it's via various ad formats that you have. So it's been very interesting to know your perspective in terms of how you're planning to implement the next, your next move. So in terms of, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much that you shared your perspective on education marketing and how best to leverage the power of intent. I really like the way, you highlighted the consumer journey. It's not very linear. So you need to create like multi-layered content to drive the consumer through the funnel, and how it is important to marry content with context to drive intent. So I think that's a great takeaway for our audiences today. And what I also took away was trying to test platform, like not just like stick to one platform, but try and figure what more you can do with your content and how you can build sub pieces and keep engaging with the audience, keep nurturing them. So thank you once again for your time. I hope all of you found this discussion as exciting as I did. Thank you everyone for joining in today. We really enjoyed hosting this session for you. We'll be sending the recording and the presentation to your registered email addresses. And if you have any questions for us, do not hesitate to write back. And if any questions in the question section were left unanswered, our customer success team will reach out to you. So we look forward to enabling you with Quora ads and building more success stories like we did with BSBI and with Marco. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thanks, Marco,
Thanks so
once
much.
again.